Hey, it's Samantha with the Rediscover Real podcast. I am so thrilled to be here with you. Are you feeling overwhelmed, confused, or stuck on a hamster wheel from constantly seeking external tools, validation, and buffering in a search for more joy and fulfillment? Rediscover Real means to pull back the curtain and return to the foundation, peeling away the layers of mindsets, identities, and beliefs that no longer serve us. As we choose to grow, move forward, and show up fully as God intended, because at our very core, inside of you, lies everything already, as God created you absolutely perfect. We get to uncover and rediscover what's inside of us, and then to expand into what we're capable of. In this space, we'll dive into topics on personal finance and budgeting, mindset and growth, relationships, network marketing, and entrepreneurship. I'm sure there'll be some laughter and possibly a few tears along the way. I'm on this journey and you're invited. I'm holding out my hand for you. Will you join me? Let's rediscover real together. Do you buy based on emotion, or are you a logical researcher? I am really excited to dig into this separately. I talked about this a bit on a separate podcast around Black Friday, but I wanted to have a separate space that you can come back and refer back to this and dig into this more. And I have a worksheet that goes along with this for free. So make sure you check the show notes to get that free worksheet, because this is going to really help you and is one of the foundation pieces to really helping you dig into your money mindset and developing healthy patterns and healthy mindsets around your finances so that you can have more peace and joy in your life. Because that's what this is about. We're not just sitting here talking about money mindset for the fun of it. I enjoy it because I love seeing the freedom that it gives people, but you're probably not in that place yet. You're like, well, something needs to shift, or I don't know, does something need to shift? And so along with creating awareness, giving you the tangible tools to actually help you shift those pieces. So then we can talk about the tactical pieces of actually how to manage your finances and steward your money well. So let's talk emotional buyer versus logical buyer. I'm going to run through these. If you didn't listen to the episode on Black Friday, or if you, we forget things. So I'm just going to go through it again. So an emotional buyer is driven by emotions. They often make impulse purchases, and they usually have a high level of brand loyalty. So they know their brand names or whatever brand they buy, they're very loyal to that. None of these are bad things. It's just learning how we operate, having the awareness of how we operate, so then we can go, okay, does this serve us? Is this serving me? Or do I get to shift this in a way? Now, a logical buyer is rational based decision making. They're often risk adverse, and they take into consideration like the long term. And so looking at this, like they look at things from that long term perspective. They're not necessarily as tied to the brands, but they're looking at quality, price, quantity, those pieces. What's worth it? But they oftentimes, and I actually fall into this camp, will opt out of everything, or kind of like they're very risk adverse. And so even with like Black Friday shopping, like I was talking about, oftentimes they either have their list and they check it twice, or they opt out of Black Friday altogether and they like block out and they don't even consider that maybe it's something that is a need and is a priority and it's a really great deal, and that they actually should or could be saying yes to and saving themselves money and stewarding that well. So that's the logical versus emotional buyer. Now, when it comes to, so there's emotional buyers are often, in that like impulse spending, they buy the things, and being able to look at what the reasoning is behind those pieces. Now, for emotional buyers, I would say oftentimes they might be seeking significance in a way, or they're seeking variety, or they're buffering with their spending. There could be all sorts of different like what's going on behind the scenes in terms of their motivations. And it's really important to dig into that from a money mindset piece. Like, what's actually going on here, and asking yourself, like, what's really going on? And the same for logical buyers. As somebody who's a logical buyer, holding on and like coming at it from a place of scarcity and being risk adverse, but very, very much being able to say, like, nope, I'm claiming 110% certainty. I know exactly where every penny is going, down to the cent. We're not straying from the budget. I am, there is, exactly, this is the plan that we're following. We are not deviating, even if it is an incredible deal that I should be taking advantage of, but that deviates from the plan, and we're not doing that, and shutting that out. And what are you gaining from that? Are you gaining certainty? Again, are you gaining significance from that? You gain significance by staying on track and by not spending money. That scarcity piece, and holding on as tightly as possible because you're looking for those pieces. It really depends on what that motivation is. So digging into that and asking yourself, what's really going on here? Why is this important to me? Or why is this not important to me? Is really key. So then, once we know that, then we can look at shifting some of those things to a healthy mindset, right? So for emotional buyers, some of the tips that I have for you would be to create a budget and to look at, okay, and to be able to have, you set a budget for yourself of, okay, this is the money I have coming in, and this is, the money that I have that I can impulse spend with. And this money over here, first of all, this money goes to bills. And then there's this money that I can do some impulse spending with, right? And how much is that? What does that look like? Because you can have the freedom and the flexibility to still be an impulse spender, but keeping it so that you're not ending up in debt and adding stress and, maxed out credit cards and all of those things. Also educating yourself just around finances and what that looks like, and asking yourself some really good questions. And this kind of goes into the next one of, what are your priorities and what is a priority? And being able to impulse spend might be something that's a priority for you because it fills a need. Now, again, digging into those needs and what's actually going on there is going to be really, really key for you. But then asking yourself, what do you want most? And maybe it's just something that you enjoy, being able to go to the mall on the weekend, and you're not looking for specific things, but if there's things that you like being able to just purchase them and do that impulse spending. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing when you set yourself up for success with that, right? Because if at the end of the day, you come back and you heap shame and guilt and judgment on your head of, well, I shouldn't have bought that, I can't return it, or like you have that buyer's remorse, you want to return it, maybe you do return it, you can end up in some really unhealthy patterns. Or you purchase that item, but then you have kind of the shame and guilt around actually using the item that you purchased, and utilizing it because you're like, well, I can't break it, I spent a lot of money on it, and like I shouldn't have bought it anyways, and then you like put it in your closet to like keep it safe so it doesn't get wrecked. That doesn't serve you, right? And then asking yourself, what do you want most? And this is, like I said, with the priorities, different seasons, our priorities are always shifting and changing and adjusting, and being okay with that. And that's really important to be able to look at, okay, what's a priority right now? Do I have the room for this? Have I set myself up for success? And also, what do I want most? Like, you might really want that item and you might really love it, but is that worth sacrificing the peace in your finances when you look at paying your credit card bill, or having to have a conversation with your spouse about where the money went for the month, or where that extra money went, those pieces. And the next piece to this, or the next tip I have, is practicing delayed gratification. And this is something we all get to do more of in every aspect of our lives, because just like going to the gym once isn't going to get you a 6-pack of abs, or eating one salad or taking supplements for 1 month isn't going to suddenly make you like this superstar, feeling like $1,000,000. Delayed gratification is so, so important in all areas. I think in relationships, in our finances, in our careers, in our education, all of the areas, health. Next up is have an emergency fund. Now, I talk about emergency fund in terms of like budgeting and on like a needs and like an emergency fund. Maybe I should call this more of a reserve fund. And that's having some money set aside for when an impulse purchase comes up, that you already have some money set aside for those impulse purchases, or for, if something is more than. And so your actual emergency fund is separate. This isn't to pay for emergencies. You're not dipping into your emergency fund for impulse purchases, but having like that backup fund of like every month you budget, okay, this is like, maybe my impulse or my fun money or my entertainment money, my shopping money, whatever that is. But then you kind of have a separate like reserve fund that you put a little bit into every month. And so then if something is over budget, you can take from that and put it towards that item or, whatever you're doing, and you have that money there. And it kind of also acts as a buffer so that you're not dipping into your savings or even considering looking at your emergency fund. Set yourself up for success. And then the last one, as an emotional spender, and is tracking your spending. So it's one thing to set up a budget, and that's like your forecast. I think I've talked about that. I definitely talk about it in my courses. Forecasting out where your money's going to go, and that's what a budget is. But then actually tracking your spending to know, where did my money go? And especially if you're dealing with maybe, some credit card debt, or, things are tight for you, there's not as much buffer space as you'd like in your finances right now. Tracking where your money is going and what you actually spent in different areas is so important. It's just as important, if not more important, than budgeting. Okay, so that's for my emotional spenders. Now, my logical spenders can also take a lot from those pieces. But for logical spenders, some tips are leaning into being more flexible and being willing to, like, just because you have a plan. Again, this comes back to what are your motivations behind it, right? And if you're like, well, I'm just craving certainty and I need to know exactly where it's going and we cannot deviate because like, that's not okay. and I'm not, like that sends you into like panic and overwhelm mode. Dig into that. Ask yourself some good questions. Get a good coach. Do some work around that. But learning how to be more flexible with, okay, so what can we adjust here? This came up this month, this opportunity came up. This is a really great opportunity, after thinking about it and working through the numbers and those pieces. I want to move forward with that. So what are we going to adjust? And that kind of is one of the tips as well, is adjusting and being realistic with your financial goals, right? Things are going to come up, things are going to shift. And so not feeling like you're failing just because your plan shifted or changed a little bit is really key. Allow yourself to have some splurges. Like, it's okay when you're stewarding your finances well, to when you see something, whether it's a Black Friday sale or outside of that, an opportunity comes up, allow yourself to have that splurge. And if you've set yourself up for success, you have that buffer space, maybe you have that reserve fund, or you've budgeted that in to have that flexibility, whatever that is. And get to take time to enjoy. Because if you're so focused and like obsessed with staying on the plan and staying on budget and your finances and money, and it's like you're obsessed over it and it's overwhelming and it's consuming you, that's not healthy either. Money is a tool that we get to use and utilize, and we get to tell it where to go. We're the bosses of it. It's not the boss of us. So stewarding it well, and also looking at ways that, in healthy ways, how can you maybe take some more risks? Where can you, look for healthy ways that you can, whether it's expanding your income, or investing in things or whatever that is, that you can take healthy risks, and not being so set to just like holding on to it and like never ever stepping out of that box. Like, don't just sit in that and play small in that box. Learning how to steward it well and expand is so life-giving and so good. And you can do so many things with it. All right, so those are the tips I have around a logical buyer as well. So I'd love to hear your feedback. Which camp are you in? Tell me wherever, drop it wherever, tag me on social, or, I think you can review or leave a comment on the podcast as well, especially if you're on Apple, but on Spotify or other places as well, and definitely on YouTube if you're watching this. And I can't wait to hear, what camp do you fall into? What tip are you going to work on first? What do you maybe get to reprioritize? What do you get to, where do you allow for some more flexibility? Or where do you get to practice delayed gratification? Are you going to set up that reserve fund, even if it's like $20, right? Just setting that up. So I can't wait to hear. I hope this has been helpful. See you soon. You just finished another episode of the Rediscover Real podcast. My hope is always that you come away encouraged. And if you found this valuable, would you share it with a friend? And be sure to tag me on social media. I love seeing your takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And I would so appreciate it if you took a second to rate and review this podcast so that more people can find it. Also, take a peek in the show notes for a link to my website that has a special gift just for you for listening today. As always, I'm on the journey and you're invited. Let's rediscover real together.